Supposedly this is day number, I think, 45 or 11.
Try imagining a place where it's always safe and warm. Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm.
Switch to TurboTax and file your own taxes free in the app if you didn't file with us last year. Just file with TurboTax, do it.
Like, I never dreamed it would be this big. Now, some people are obsessive and like absolutely have thought through everything. I fall more on that side, but not him today. He was.
Alain de Botton, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Where do bad inner voices come from?
Well, the way I like to think about it is that an inner voice is always an outer voice that got internalized. You know, we're very porous people. The way in which we're spoken to becomes the way in which we speak to ourselves. I mean, if that sounds too weird, think of language, right? All of us arrive in the world not speaking any language. And by the age of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we'll have learned a lot of words. But the fascinating thing about human beings is we don't know we're learning. So we can be doing other stuff like, doing handstands in the garden or drawing buttercups in the kitchen. And we're becoming expert grammarians. Hundreds of words are entering our minds. Complex grammatical constructions are entering our minds. Now, the way I like to think about it is that language analogy holds true for emotional life as well. So at the same time as we're learning a language of words and declensions, we're also learning a language of emotions. We're learning things like, what's a man like? What's a woman like? What happens if you give something to someone? What happens if you're vulnerable? What happens if you want to play? What happens if you say no? What happens if you say yes? All of these are the syntax. They comprise the syntax of our emotional lives. And it's an invisible syntax, just as our grammatical syntax is invisible. But it's there, and it will operate throughout our lives, and it will be immensely hard to change. I mean, you know what it's like if if you grew up speaking English, and then you want to learn a foreign language. You suddenly want to learn Italian. Well, good luck to you. You'll be learning a long time. It's not impossible, can be done, but I think it's helpful to think of how hard it is, because sometimes people get very impatient in their attempts to change things about themselves. They go things like, I want to change how I relate to people in relationships, say. And I've read a book, and I've been to 3 therapy sessions, and I'm really annoyed. Nothing works. And you want to go, okay, imagine this was Italian. So you've looked at a book on Italian, you've taken 3 classes, and you don't speak fluent Italian, and you're complaining. So we do need some modesty here, just in order to be properly ambitious. I mean, as you know, the root cause of sort of early despair and early retirement from things is a false picture of what success demands in an area. And I think in the area of emotional improvement or maturation, we sometimes let ourselves down by thinking it's going to have an ease which it won't have.
It's interesting thinking about how language shapes our experience of emotions and our experience of the world. That German, for instance, has a colorful number of ways to describe certain emotions that you can't in other. He said, well, does the fact that we have the word for it almost unlock that emotion in a way? It allows us to do self-investigation.
Yes, I think, philosophers watching this, philosophers of language may have arguments pro and it's a big thing, but I definitely feel that the more words we have, the more we can attend to what we feel, and in some cases, the more we can feel. I remember learning the word anxiety when I was a teenager, and thinking, wow, that's a really useful word. Probably nowadays people learn anxiety a lot earlier, but in those days, it was a fascinating word to learn. And the more one's vocabulary stretches, the more you're able to put a flag in bits of your psyche that are perhaps painful. And I think, if you think about why people go to psychotherapy or even frankly, what motivates a lot of friendship, it's somebody else helps to give you a vocabulary for bits of your mind and bits of your experience that have not till now, that have eluded definition. And that definition is not merely, it's not merely a fancy thing. It's a life-saving thing, because the more you can define, the easier life gets. Freud speculated that the origins of language lie in an ability to bear frustration, so that if a child can think, I'm currently frustrated, but mummy's coming back, and the person's got those words, then that can help you to bear missing and also bear excitement, or all sorts of things. Things can become more bearable the more you can put them into language. And I think adults know this when we go back journaling, right? Why is it so helpful to journal? Because we know it is. All research shows that it is. What is it about translating a feeling into a word for that feeling that's helpful? And I think it tames, it contains, and it narrows the spread of difficult emotions.
It's very ephemeral, right? You've got these thoughts up here moving around, floating about, and then they have to be concretized. And you're right, it almost feels like it squeezes it through an aperture of some kind. You say, okay, this is what I meant by that. It's not this notion.
Yeah.
It's not this sort of ambient sound. It's somebody shouted a noise in the next room. Yeah. It's like, oh no, it's here. Yeah. I can touch it. You can see it.
Yeah, that's right. And think of relationships, couples. The more their vocabulary for what they're going through increases, the more they can say, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling, when you do that, I feel this, etc. And the enemy, the sort of normal word is people say communication, but it's really language. It's putting language to feelings. And so much goes wrong in life because we're unable to do it. It starts with ourselves. We can't do it with ourselves. There's a useful phrase that psychotherapists use, talk about disassociation. It's a fascinating concept. What would it mean to disassociate? And the way it's understood sort of therapeutically is that you could feel an emotion, it's so difficult, tricky in some way, and you then stop feeling it. You disassociate from the feeling that's in you. It's still in you, but you're no longer registering it. Tricky. And the argument is always the more you can associate and the less you can disassociate, the better off you will be. But look, there are many bits of life that are unbearable to us. Let's remember this. There's a wonderful quote in Middlemarch, George Eliot, big fat 19th century novel, where she says, if we could properly register the full sounds of life, we would lose our minds from the full richness of existence. In other words, if you were sensitive to everything that's around you, you would sort of go mad. And I think if we think about what madness is, so-called, what colloquially called madness, if you think of people with severe mental illness, very often what has happened is that their ability to sequence thoughts has gone. Everything is coming at them, and they can't grade thoughts. They can't say, this thought must go away now. So they'll go, I made a mistake 15 years ago. And if you're balanced, you'll go, well, that was 15 years ago, and it's not a problem. We don't have to have it pressing down. If your reason is buckling, often everything that is alarming comes at you at once. Everything that is difficult at once. And so in a way, I'm sticking up for the ability sometimes to take distance from our feelings. So, I started off by going, it's really important to know what you're feeling. But let's also remember, at points, the ability not to feel the full force of everything also belongs to health. So it's a double-edged sword there.
And Doug.
There it is, Limu, the 50-yard line. Soon we'll be telling the whole stadium how Liberty Mutual customizes car insurance to save people hundreds! Whoa! Ah! Looks like we're walking. We'll get them at halftime. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Before, my quick response, always a thumbs up. Today, thanks to Viz, a once-a-day prescription eye drop, my vision is clear and my comeback's sharp as ever.
In clinical trials, the most common side effects include eye irritation, temporary dim or dark vision, headaches, and eye redness.
Make it visible.
What's your advice for how people can heal a negative inner voice? We've got this odd artifact that we've carried with us, this inheritance of our life, but kind of almost some previous life of ours.
Yeah.
Where should people begin if they want to have a more friendly inner voice?
Such a good question. I'd say you have to start by finding the inner voice, because it doesn't announce itself as an inner voice. So how are we going to, we're not talking here about literally hearing voices. Some people do, but we're not talking about that here. What we're talking about is a way of speaking to yourself, or a way of conducting yourself in your own mind that owes more to something from outside than from inside, and that is more negative, or we can put it this way, unfair to you and your chances, your hopes, etc. So how do we detect this is even going on? Because I don't think it's necessarily obvious. Here, I think that it's quite helpful to get people to do what are called sentence completion exercises, where you start off with a stub sentence, and then you have an ellipsis, ... So men are, women are, life is, I am, I want, if ... because ... And you say to people, right, here's a list of these things.
Wow.
Without thinking too much, very important prompt. Without thinking too much, just say the first thing comes into your head. Men are, women are, life is, I am, etc. Or even beginnings of stories, story completion exercises. When I meet someone that I ... just finish that sentence. And what people will come out with is fascinating. They'll go, men are cruel. Wow, men are cruel, are they? A person might even be surprised that they've said that. Then you say, okay, where's that come from? What led you to believe that? And often what you'll find is a story that owes more to something outside than something inside. When I meet someone, what will happen is ... they'll be very friendly to me, then they'll turn against me. Wow. Where did that come from? It's going to be a specific story in the past that, is being carried forward.
Isn't it interesting that we're talking about maybe the thing people identify with most, the texture of their own experience, the landscape of their inner mind. But you're then saying, well, this may not fully be self-generated. This might be something which you've absorbed from the past, from society, from norms, from cultures, from the way that you've compensated for past traumas, etc. Or just habits. But it brings up an interesting question, which is, okay, so who are you? Where are you in this? Are you that voice? In some ways you are, because you're inexorably linked to all of the experiences you've had. But then we have this sort of transcendent us, which is better. It's the better us. If only I could. It's the me without the compensation, the trauma, the etc.
Such a good question. We're not, there's sometimes this idea of, the real me that is separate from everybody else. We are penetrated by society. Think of how we're speaking, right? We're using words as we speak to one another. Every one of those words is both spoken by us and was made by other people long before we were even a rumor in anyone's mind, right? We are penetrated by society. Every one of the words that I am using is the result of generations and generations of people who've used those words, refined their meaning, etc., and then given them to me. So that's literally the language. We're permeated by social language. Even our biology, as we know, our gut bacteria is, both us and not us. So the neat, Chris, Alain, we are these sort of, entities where you can put a strict circle around. Now we're interpenetrated by society, biology, history, etc. So then the question comes, well, is there anything, that's more me, less me? And I think here, absolutely. And I think that one of the journeys, life's full of journeys. One of the journeys that I think we all are on is to start to separate out a little bit. Well, I can understand there's a lot in me that was just put there by society, by the context in which I was born. which of those bits do I want to keep or focus on, and which of those bits do not fully represent, my values, my considered choices, etc. And this is where life gets interesting, because people start to say things like, well, where I come from, normal meant ... But the more I think about it, the more I'm reflecting on who I really am, the more I want to ditch that and that and that. It's as a form of editing process.
Self-authorship.
Absolutely. And, I think that the more mature someone is, I'll use that word, I could have used others. The more mature someone is, the more what they do, what they think, the values they hold, owe more to their own work, their own sifting, their own editing, than it does to the context that they were born into. I think, it's interesting, if you look at the arc of a life, right? A very small child is often remarkably authentic, which is why we adults, in small doses at least, have such great time with little ones, because they come out with stuff and you think, oh my God, I can't believe they've just said that thing. They've just said that Granny's nose is too big, or that this restaurant's boring, or this very expensive thing is a load of rubbish, etc. They'll come out with stuff that is non-normative. And that's very interesting, because as an adult, you recognize a kind of, you recognize your own spontaneity that's been lost normally. So it's kind of bittersweet. You think, oh, you don't want exactly the child's version of it, because that would lead you into trouble, but you want an adult version, and it's very hard to get. And probably the high watermark of the opposite is when you're 14 and a half and you're at school, and your most fervent wish is to be like everybody else. You want your parents to be like everybody else, you want your name to be like everybody else, you want your appearance, your haircut, etc. You cannot bear difference. And then slowly, you individuate, and that's a very exciting journey. Seeing, I don't think anyone individuates in all areas. So I think the first choice is, what are the areas that matter a lot to you? I'm interested in individuation, but when it comes to clothes, you might have noticed, I kind of, it's a really interesting area, but I'm just leaving that one for another time. I'm just not engaging with that.
Yep.
Similarly, food, fascinating area, very interesting. Yeah, not quite on my radar yet, but, other areas, what I'm reading, very, opinionated, very individual. So I don't think all of us can do it in all areas, but we choose. And that's also part of what makes someone an individual.
Do that with Acrobat, Adobe Acrobat. Use PDF Spaces, it's your new foundation. Grab your docs, your permits, your moves. AI levels up your pitch, gets it in a groove. Choose a template with your timeless cool. Come on now, let's flex those tools. Do a new outline, it's your vision. Do a new slide, pure precision. Draft, design, deliver, make it sing. AI builds the deck so you can build that thing. Do that with Acrobat.
I'm too busy crushing goals. With Factor, my diet doesn't slow me down. My life is always busy and dinner is a struggle. I'm either ordering takeout or eating the same boring meal day after day. I couldn't keep up until I tried Factor. Factor saves me time and effort with nutritious chef-made meals delivered to my door. 0 prep meals heat up in just 2 minutes and they taste delicious. So easy and fast, even I can do it. Sign up now and get 50% off your first box.
I love the idea of children being unencumbered by sort of expectation in that way. And trying to find the balance between what would the mature childlike version of ourselves do or say in this moment.
Yeah.
Where have we found ourselves too swayed by the opinions of others, by expectations, by societal norms, etc.
Do you remember that story of Picasso, who was going around an art school, like little kids were doing art, and some kid was sort of scrawling, mummy, whatever, and this kid was 7, and Picasso said famously, when I was his age, I was painting like Raphael, one of the great Renaissance artists, and it was sort of true. I mean, young Picasso, and then he went, and it's taken me all my life to remember how to paint like this.
Unreal.
Now, he didn't, an adult painting like a child is not a child painting like a child. It's something different, which is why when people go, oh, a child could have done that. Well, when a child does it, it's one thing. And when an adult does it, it's another thing. And I think it's quite different. And I think that's why, when you look at Picasso, and there are lots of artists and lots of figures you could sort of draw that analogy with, but, when you're looking at a painting that Picasso did when he was 90, at the end of his life, and it's got elements of stuff that a child might do, but it's gone through, that this guy has been doing so much other stuff. So he's got deeper reasons.
Did you ever read His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman?
No.
Okay. Trilogy of children's books, ostensibly, I guess. This was my favorite series when I was a kid. And in it, the protagonist, Lyra, finds this truth teller. It's called an alethiometer. And for some reason, this particular device, it takes an entire lifetime of study to be able to read it. And as a child, she can do it immediately. So it's this beautiful arc, and it's the first time I ever thought about it. And Pullman takes you through unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence to conscious incompetence to conscious competence.
Lovely.
And one of the final scenes of the entire book, at the very, very end, she goes back to the nunnery where she was being raised 5 years ago before the story begins. And she's lost the ability to read it. She hits puberty, and it's kind of this fall. It talks about kind of the awareness that her and her partner now have. And she says, I can't read it anymore. And the nun turns to her and she says, my dear, it's going to take you an entire lifetime, but the depth of knowledge you have will be greater than it ever was before. And it's that arc, unconscious incompetence, unconscious competence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence. And that finishing side, something that's been earned. You found your way there through effort, agency, self-authorship is it's special.
Yeah. And I think, it's interesting, isn't it, when people who've read a lot, thought a lot, etc., come out with stuff and it sounds very, very simple. And I think our society gets a bit puzzled by that, because the sort of obvious respect goes to people that speak in a very dense way and you can't quite understand what they mean. So, philosophy, the discipline I started out in, the heroes there are people like Wittgenstein or Hegel, Kant, etc. It's very, very hard.
Not superbly accessible.
To make headway. And then, you turn to the East. You look at Eastern philosophy. You look at the poetry of someone like Basho in Japan, medieval Japan. It's so simple. It's, it's 4 words on a piece of paper, and very easy to go mumbo jumbo or child's play or whatever. And to be kind of mature enough to go, okay, I'm going to bear with the anxiety that this is very simple sounding. In the East, the idea is that poetry, for example, can sound very, very simple. The point is that it's an interaction between the reader and the work. So not everything is in the poem or the saying. You bring yourself to it. And therefore, the ultimate impact of that work is a collaboration between you and the work.
Fascinating.
So the Western view might be to go, there's not that much in there. And it's the artist's fault.
It's your job.
Whereas in the East, the view is, well, it's a collaboration. So if you're not seeing anything, it's because you're not bringing enough of yourself. So very interesting to get, lots of the arts. I mean, think of that Enzo, in just a circle. This is the whole of life. Whole of life. It's just, you're just doing a circle with your brush. And amazing the courage to say, okay, we're going to go with this. We're going to, the whole of existence is this circle. And if you meditate profoundly enough on this, you will see the world, not just in a grain of sand, but in a circle, etc. And we really meet a fault line here in the Western understanding of depth and profundity. This takes a bit of time for the Western mind to kind of get to grips with that. We're like, come on, is this a joke? Are they just peddling us something?
I'm exhausted. Shopping for a mattress is just so confusing.
Sounds like mattress shopophobia. At Slumberland, our sleep counselors are here to help you find the best mattress without any pressure.
But awesome pressure relief.
Slumberland. Stop stressing, start sleeping.
The Tempur-Pedic Breeze makes sleep feel cool. So no more sweating all night or blasting the air conditioning. Because the Tempur Breeze feels up to 10 degrees cooler all night long. Find cooler sleep with the Tempur-Breeze collection at an Ashley near you.
Yeah, probably not.
Sleep isn't just about how long you rest, but also how well your body stays in its optimal temperature zone throughout the night. And this is where 8 Sleep comes in. Just add their brand new Pod 4 Ultra to your mattress like a fitted sheet, and it automatically cools down or warms up each side of your bed. It's got integrated sensors that track your sleep time, sleep phases, HRV, snoring, and your heart rate with 99% accuracy. It even starts cooling or heating your bed an hour before your bedtime. And that's why it's been clinically proven to increase total sleep time by up to 1 hour every night. I've been using my 8 Sleep mattress for years, and I literally can't imagine life without it. I'm on the road at the moment in London, and it feels medieval to not have an actively cooled and heated mattress topper. It is a total game changer. Best of all, they have a 30-night sleep trial, so you can buy it and sleep on it for 29 days. And if you don't like it, they'll give you your money back. Plus, they ship internationally. Right now, you can get $350 off the Pod 4 Ultra by going to the link in the description below or heading to 8sleep.com/modernwisdom using the code modernwisdom at checkout. That's EIGHT sleep.com/modernwisdom and modernwisdom at checkout. Why do you think we struggle to connect with our emotions fully?
Come on, let's be honest here with the audience. We know what emotions are like. They're not just lovely, cuddly things. They're absolutely terrifying a lot of the time. Think of what it takes. Think about love, right? So we think that people spend their lives looking for love. And that's a half truth. They spend a good deal of time running away from love as well, in all sorts of forms. We are as assiduous in our escape from love as we are in our pursuit, perhaps more so. Why? Because it's terrifying. It's especially terrifying if you come from a childhood, or a young world, where there was some kind of disruption in your attachments, in your experience of love. The next time you then meet love as an adult, half of you is just wanting to run away. And I think people don't still not fully appreciate enough the strength with which we are going to resist love if our earliest experience of it was in any way difficult. And this explains a great deal of the misery of the world.
It's very interesting to think about how much we try and push away the thing that we're also wanting. Like how we are complicit in creating the scenario that we're so terrified of having happened. I've been thinking a lot about second-order emotions, third-order emotions. So you have a thing that happens, you feel agitated, and then you begin to tell yourself a story and you become stressed at your agitation, and then you become resentful at your stress about your agitation, and then you become anxious about, that additional layering, this kernel that we began with regards to the emotion sort of explodes out, and before you know it, you're feeling an emotion that's not only the thing that started, but it's an entire universe away.
Yeah.
And this is now the problem, not this.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm not sure if I understand you fully, but is it really the case that you are not accepting the primary emotion? So let's say you go somewhere, it should be nice, you're disappointed. You can't be disappointed. It's meant to be nice. You can't accept that disappointment. And then you're angry with yourself for feeling disappointed. And then, and on it, whereas if one could just go, okay, maybe it's all right to be disappointed. I mean, it's not brilliant, but there it is. Or I'm feeling sad. Okay, well, wouldn't be what I wanted, but let me not be sad that I'm sad or angry that I'm sad.
Well, I think this is why we have certain signature emotions that feel like home base.
Yeah.
There's ones that we're intimately familiar with, and there's ones that scare us a lot more.
Yeah.
And a unsatisfactory but familiar emotion is often more safe to us than a slightly novel, more exotic, but scarier one.
And also, I think happier one. I mean, talking just a minute ago, people escaping love, people also escape happiness. I mean, the way I think about it is that very often we're in a situation it's like being a prisoner. You've been kept in jail for a very long time. Your diet's been restricted. It's not been much fun. Then the gate opens and you're allowed to walk out. It should be a great day. Fantastic. You're free. We know what happens. let's say you've been on a calorie-restricted diet. Suddenly someone says, here's a buffet. You can eat anything you like. You don't want to eat it. You can't digest it. You can't process it. It's too much. So, something similar goes on in our attitudes to happiness often. I mean, it's useful to say to yourself, ask yourself, in the circumstances in which I grew up, what did it mean to be happy? And for some of us, it meant upsetting a parent. It meant challenging the dominant mood in a household. It meant taking away attention from somebody else. It meant danger. And that's odd because we think, well, why would it be dangerous to be happy? Well, but there are all